Thanks, Eddie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always wonderful to be the postprandial speaker. So I'm going to talk about the work that we do at the AKC Canine Health Foundation and how we bring all of these different resources and groups of people together, focused specifically on the health of dogs. I have no conflicts to disclose. So the AKC Canine Health Foundation was founded in 1995 by the AKC. We are an independent affiliate of the AKC, but they had a vision that the needs of dogs were not being adequately addressed for health issues. And so with that, started the foundation. To date, we have over $46 million in funding for canine health specific research. And at any particular time, we're managing over 100 grants that are active, which accounts for about $9 to $10 million in active research going on at any given time, which is a significant amount of funding for health research for dogs. And we are the largest global funder of exclusively canine health research. So we fund globally, as I mentioned, and we measure the impacts and the outcomes for all dogs. That's all very measured and available on our website, and we have attained the highest industry ratings for a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're now a 4-star Charity Navigator and a GuideStar Platinum organization. This matters because everything is transparent, accountable, and we steward our donors' monies effectively. So this shows you a graphic of some of these outcomes. So we work with dog lovers, we work with veterinarians, we work with the AKC and the AKC breed clubs, we work with partner corporations and foundations, and more than 42 million in health research specifically, so this is grant programs only, to more than 900 grants and resulting in more than 700 peer-reviewed publications, which, as you know, if you don't get the information out and available from the research, nobody's using it. So this is a lot of publications that have all been cataloged and tied to the grants, and these studies have been cited more than 23,000 times in other research. So while these aren't all the measures for productivity, these are some excellent measures for productivity and impact for the health of dogs. And our mission is to advance the health of all dogs and their people by funding scientific research and disseminating health information to prevent, treat, and cure canine disease. And why I italicized all dogs is that sometimes people get confused that with AKC in our name that we only work for purebred dogs. We work for all dogs. And a dog at the end of the day is a dog, and what we learn in one dog is often very relevant and important to other dogs and also to people. And I think it was really insightful of the people who started the foundation in 1995 to include people in the mission statement. It gives us a real capability to have a One Health approach to research and canine and human health. So if you look at the research program areas, we, again, are working only on a single species, the dog. Dogs come in all shapes and sizes. And we look at research program areas that will address whole dog health. So we really do have individual research program areas in each of these areas. And I like to think we're looking from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail and everything in between to address the important needs of dogs. And you can go to that QR code, and that will get you to all of our active health research, and you can investigate the portfolio. If you're looking for a particular disease type, if you're looking for a particular breed, all of it is very searchable for the years of research and all of the studies. So, of course, we look at general health, but then we look at specific systems as well, like ophthalmology, liver and kidney health. But then we look at some other research initiatives that really will impact the dog as a whole, such as a tick-borne disease or epilepsy. So I started with the foundation in late 2015. And so we looked at what do dogs need? We have limited resources. Where should we apply them? We want to have the greatest impact on the greatest needs for dogs. So we looked across the spectrum to see where we had gaps in our research portfolio, and we needed to bump up some additional fundraising and put those funds directly to research. So one of the first initiatives we launched was the Tick-Borne Disease Initiative. And as you know, with climate change, we are seeing a real increase in tick-borne diseases. So Gulf Coast tick, for example, used to just be in the Gulf Coast region. We're now seeing that tick going up the East Coast. We've watched the Lyme tick spread from Connecticut in the Northeast across the top of the U.S. And with that are carried these organisms that are going to infect dogs and their people. The other thing that we're really addressing with the Tick-Borne Disease Initiative are co-infections, because while you might test a dog for Lyme disease, that may not be the whole story if you treat only for Lyme disease. So there's a lot of research going on in this initiative for better diagnostics. I am completely convinced as a clinical pathologist that we're underdiagnosing tick-borne diseases in dogs. Dogs and people get the same diseases in many of the cases for what's being carried by these insects. So that's one of the big initiatives. Epilepsy is another big initiative that we have. Epilepsy, as you know, as veterinarians, is the single most common neurological disorder across all dogs. It's also a very important disease in people. And pediatric epilepsy and epilepsy of dogs have a lot of similarities, including in genetics. So the epilepsy research initiative, we're looking again at better ways for diagnosis, looking for genes that cause this disease and genes that may contribute to this disease or be risk factors, as well as new treatments. Then hemangiosarcoma. I mean, over the course of my career as a veterinarian, I have seen no progress in the treatment of hemangiosarcoma, which makes me very sad. And so being in a position now to do something about that, we have a huge initiative ongoing, trying to find new ways and new research that will tackle hemangiosarcoma in dogs. So we're taking a multi-pronged approach to that. Again, there's the genetic component we're looking at, environmental components, associations between hemangiosarcoma and tick-borne disease. So it's a multifaceted approach with these focused initiatives to really try to get at some of these major needs of dogs. Canine cancer, again, remains one of the top concerns. We've really seen epidemic levels of lymphoma, for example, in dogs and people. A lot of the diseases, of course, as we all know as veterinarians, that dogs get, people also get. But that takes a lot of education because the medical community doesn't necessarily understand that we have the same specialists that they do, and we have and are seeing the same types of diseases. So we're trying to capitalize on that from a One Health approach. Emerging infectious diseases, it seems like every day I'm reading about some new case that has shown up in the U.S. that we haven't seen previously. We're seeing cases of brucellosis now in dogs. We're seeing cases of leishmaniasis. We're hearing about these cases of rabies, parvo outbreaks. All of this is for different reasons, some of which is related to the import of dogs without regulation, the retail rescue situation, as well as the many different factors that relate to fear over vaccines, for example. So emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases remain a real important focus for us because if we're not going to put the funding dollars into this, there's really not a lot of others who will. Working dog health is another area of interest. We see a lot of working dogs out there now, from service dogs and guide dogs to the increased number of TSA detection dogs, all the different jobs that dogs were purpose-bred to do. And we need to take care of these dogs. These dogs have different health needs when they are in a working environment, and this has been a focus of our research, is to improve not only selection but also health for working dogs. Then One Health, as I mentioned, comparative oncology, emerging infectious diseases, genetics of epilepsy. These are all areas where we've seen outcomes from the research that we funded directly influence human health as well. And then genetics and epigenetics. So really, this foundation started with the birth of a lot of the new knowledge in genetics, and we have invested over $20 million in genetic research for dogs, some breed specific, some not. Some has resulted in specific tests that have led to testing in breeds that have now come close to eradicating these diseases and conditions in their breed. But there's much more to do, and there's a lot that's being capitalized on by people who are developing tests without maybe the oversight that's needed. So we're involved in this as well. Again, I hope I'm giving you the impression that we really take a multifaceted approach to looking at the dog as a whole and looking across all the systems. So the focus of this session is to talk about how we are investing resources to reduce inherited disease. And as you heard earlier this morning, you heard from Dr. Oberbauer, you heard from Dr. Bell, all dogs get genetic disease. Mixed breed dogs and purebred dogs. Humans also are prone to genetic disease. It's just the nature of being a mammal with the DNA that we have. So how do we get at this, and how do we make the most use, again, of the limited resources that we have? And how do we provide information about these findings and resources to the veterinarians who need to be at the forefront of helping these owners and these breeders with their dogs? This is really key. So we sponsor research, as I mentioned. We also encourage study participation. So we only fund humane health research, and so there's a lot of it that's clinical trials and clinical cases, and we need those clinical cases, and we need the veterinarians who are involved to get their clients enrolled to either participate in clinical trials or to provide samples that are needed for some of these studies. And you'll see when you look at our portfolio and also the links that I've provided here that you can search open studies that we're funding that need samples and need study participants. So what I would encourage you to share that, research that with your clients, and when you see opportunities for them to participate in health and genetics and cancer studies, that you look at that and do that. It's how we're all going to help one another. We provide outreach for veterinarians, for their clients and patients, and you'll see at these different links, which are all going to be available to you, the different ways that we have informational sheets, the latest research publications, materials that you can download and use, as well as webinars that we sponsor that provide continuing education credit for veterinarians. We also provide educational grants on an annual basis, and this has been a real focused area of interest for me, because if we don't train the next generation of veterinarians to understand and work in the area of canine health research, someone else will fill that slot, and we need to be the ones who really are producing outcomes and training people. So one of the grant programs I'll mention is the Theriogenology Residency Program, and all of you know this is the reproductive health arm of veterinary medicine. There are schools that don't teach any small animal reproductive health in their course curriculum. So we are funding, along with our partners at the AKC and the Theriogenology Foundation, we're now funding 2 residencies a year in theriogenology that has to be small animal focused and also has to have a clinical genetics component. Because the other thing that we identified is all of this genetic testing is happening, and who's providing the training and the resources and the counseling that needs to go along with understanding what these tests mean. So when your clients come into the office with their test results, you need to be able to look at those and help them understand what this is going to mean to their pet dog and what this is going to mean to their breeding animals. So this Theriogenology Residency Program has already grown the caseloads at all of the universities that have been awarded these grants, and has also extended the outreach of theriogenology residents with the veterinary students, with breeders, and with local kennel clubs. One of our first graduates from this program is Dr. Carla Barstow, so she's here with us being a moderator today. So I encourage you to take a look at these residency programs, whether you're seeking further education yourself or you're seeking to have some outreach and help with cases that you're working on. We also provide educational grants for clinician scientists. So when I was at Mass General Hospital, this was a really important way that the human medical community approaches research. They train clinician scientists. And this is a nice model for that. And this year we have 5 clinician fellows that we have awarded grants to. And I want to acknowledge the OFA because they got on board as one of the sponsors for this program, which is outstanding. So we're putting these resources again to training the next generation. And all of these individuals are doing research that's directly related to canine health. So also we provide research and education through other means, partnering with the OFA. And you had a full discussion this morning on CHIC, the Canine Health Information Center. And I'm going to talk specifically about the DNA repository because this is an invaluable resource. When we have grant proposals submitted to us, which we take in all year round, we have specific calls for grant proposals, and they go through a very rigorous scientific review process before decisions are made for funding. And one of the things that our scientific review committee looks at is if they're going to do a clinical trial or they're going to study a particular disease, are they going to be able to get enough samples to be able to actually do the research? Well, we can now turn to CHIC and the DNA repository to get DNA samples, and when we have an approved grant proposal through the Canine Health Foundation, we call up Eddie, and he searches through his databases, and these samples are shared directly with researchers. This is really an incredible tool and very powerful, the things that we're doing with this. And not only is the DNA there, but the phenotyping information is also there in this database. So this is a very useful tool in the way that we partner with the OFA. We also sponsor a canine health conference, and we do this every other year. It's a big conference that happens in St. Louis. It brings together our funded researchers, veterinarians, parent clubs, health and genetics representatives. And you may not know this, but every AKC parent club has health and genetics representatives, and many of them have a number of veterinarians within their clubs. And these people all come together for this conference, and we talk in detail and get to network on how we get more work done for better health for dogs and disseminate the information on the studies that have already been funded. Working with OFA and the AKC, we also now, last year, had our largest class of veterinary students that are brought to this conference. So we are able to have a veterinary student from each of the U.S. veterinary schools come to this conference, and they really get to dive in, meet the researchers, meet breeders, and learn about how the OFA and CHF work together to improve the health of dogs. And they take that information back to their classmates and they give a presentation on what they learned. And for most of them, I can tell you that it's an insight that they hadn't previously had. And so we're finding really great success with this partnership as well. So additional resources, we have started with an access to a genetic consultation service. Again, all these genetic tests are now available, but who's going to help you interpret them? So this is the link that you can go to. It's also on our website, www.akcchf.org, and you can go directly to the genetic counseling site. This is, again, a service that's free of charge. You can contact them for a consult as a veterinarian with a case. You can have your client clients contact them, breeders can contact them. And it's bringing together, it's part of the clinical genetics component of the theriogenology residency program. And clinical geneticists, clinicians, and students and residents are working together to support this. So this is free of charge and available to you. You heard also this morning about this onslaught of new genetic tests and all of these labs that open up. And there aren't current generalized standards for these labs. So we hear a lot of horror stories of people sending samples in and getting discordant results, trying to make decisions for good health for their dogs. And I would encourage you to take a look at this. We've partnered with this international collaborative to harmonize genetic testing for dogs. And there's an online source there that you can use to research labs and tests and for which breeds that will help you make decisions. And then I'd also like to direct you to the World Small Animal Veterinary Association's position statement on genetic testing, and they have a database as well that you can access free of charge, and it's really a wealth of information. So these are resources that are available to you through our funding and partnerships. So some examples of studies that have utilized some of the chick DNA samples, just to give you some direct evidence of this. Study on Addison's disease and SLO in bearded collies. Bloat, we have a large initiative going on in bloat and trying to uncover some of the genetics in bloat. Copper toxicosis in Dalmatians. Pigmentary uveitis in golden retrievers, and TVD, tricuspid valve dysplasia, in dogs, and this has a real focus on Labrador retrievers. So the veterinary outreach I mentioned, canine health resources, we have fact sheets, white papers, all new and up to date. You can see examples of the PDFs. They're in color, they're downloadable. You can print them and give them to your clients. You can share them. They're just there for you to use. We also have quarterly newsletters. You can sign up there. Individual and clinical memberships, and we send you a plaque and you can demonstrate that you support canine health research. We have a tribute card program that's very popular. People like to know when their dog passes that a donation has been made that will go to the future health of dogs. And then we have veterinary student research internships. This is the list of the 2019 webinar series that I mentioned to you. Dr. McGrath is one of our funded investigators. You may have heard her speak on CBD in epilepsy in dogs. We're the major funder behind that work that she's doing. She's going to give a webinar. These are race certified. They're free to register. We'll have an update on canine flu, influence of early maternal interaction on offspring behavior and development, which is really focused on the working dogs. Update on degenerative myelopathy, and this is a big topic that we've invested in over a number of years, addressing spay-neuter and how early spay-neuter relates to disease conditions and prevalence in different sizes, breeds, etc. of dogs. So those will all be great to tune into. So we're in this together. This really is truly all for the dogs, investing in science for better health. And we'd love to have you join us. And I want to thank VMX and the OFA. And feel free to email me. You can get a hold of me at that email address. And appreciate your time and interest.